Hello and welcome back, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Today we are going to be doing a rundown of Civilization Dev Diary number 6, which is detailing diplomacy, influence, and trade, and also a little bit of discussion about resources. We're doing this because upcoming is the release of Civilization 7, not to be confused with number 6, which is dropping on February 6th in terms of getting the early release if you paid for the premium version, and February 11th for the normal version. Just wanted to note that other content creators, who are not us, have gotten early access to the game, so if you wanted to see stuff like gameplay, it is out there on YouTube, and that might be a better choice for your video. But if you want to hear us run this down, and we're going to run it down, baby, then stick around, and we will be talking through this and talking about kind of game development in a general sense as well as we go through this. Welcome back, Civ fans. Hello, good to be back. The studio is a buzz. A buzz is a really sweet word. In terms of words that are polarized, in terms of using letters from the beginning of the alphabet and the end of the alphabet, I actually can't think of a single word that is more polarized than a buzz. There has to be words that are more polarized, but none come to mind. We have A and B from the beginning of the alphabet repping their set, and U and double Z from the end of the alphabet. Really quite strong here. But with excitement as we now begin the final weeks towards the upcoming launch of Sid Meier's Civilization 7. And what better way to kick things off than a new dev diary with some of our biggest topics: diplomacy, influence, and trade. Big nice. Here's Bill Anderson, with more detail on these much requested topics, and as always, drop a comment or question in our social channels. Big social. Hi everyone, my name is Bill Anderson. I'm a relatively new game designer who just started on Civilization 7, but I've been playing Civilization and many other 4X games and board games for as long as I can remember. Today I'm very excited to share details about the upcoming changes to diplomacy and trade in Civilization 7 and some of the goals of the new system. Diplomacy and trade have been a core part of the Civilization franchise for many years, like decades, bro. Whether it's establishing trade networks and managing your relations with other civs, exchanging resources, and declaring war. The two systems have often been intertwined, but in Civilization 7, we're going to be introducing new additions and adjustments that really shake up gameplay in cool ways. So let's get into it. Yeah, really kind of like when trade... One of the things I like about Victoria 3 is how trade should put more pressure on other systems down road and various types of effects, but it has the potential to do that, and I really love when trade is like very impactful and causes two economies to become interdependent. Although that might be hard to represent in a game like Civ that's spanning 6,000 years. But diplomacy. In Civilization, the main goal of diplomacy is to provide you with a way to interact with other empires, shaping relationships with a way that suits your strategy. These interactions could include a wide range of possibility, from declaring alliances to establishing open borders, all brought to life through negotiations with the renowned world leader. From past Civilization games, players are probably most familiar with diplomacy when it takes the form of making a deal. You make an offer, which can be any combination of things like gold, resources, agreements, great works, etc., and see if the AI player accepts, rejects, renegotiates the offer. This has been one of the weaknesses of the AI in Civ 6 for a while. We have seen just today, which for you guys will be yesterday if you're watching this today, but if you're watching it not today but later after release, it'll be far earlier. We've just noticed that you could do stuff like buy a whole bunch of Diplo favor from the AI when they are bugged out and they sell it for nothing, and then sell it back to them for a lot. And so they're not always the toughest in terms of negotiation or evaluation of what is of deal worth. But with human players, of course, this is not as much a concern. Internally, we liken this system to a bartering table, as the back and forth process of accepting, rejecting, and amending offers was similar to what it's like to haggle for something. Interesting. For Civilization 7, we wanted to elevate the diplomacy where it's less about the minutiae and more about empowering you to make decisions on a grand scale. Interesting. So less about micromanaging trades. Like, I want to always trade my luxury resources away that are additional ones, and I want to always buy as many luxuries as possible, this type of thing. Maybe we automate this. What if instead of trying to calculate how much gold is worth trading for some horses, you instead increase your overall trade relations with another leader and let the merchants of your empire do the actual bartering? This sounds good to me. With leaders persisting across ages, how do we make sure those relationships have a lasting impact? How can we give you the tools to counter outside aggression and influence with other leaders decide and other leader and influence other leaders' decisions during a conflict. I don't know why my brain spazzed out on that sentence. All of these questions and the central goal of making diplomacy matter more than ever has led us to the introduction of a brand new yield to Civilization 7. Influence. Very cool. Okay. Influence, the diplomacy yield. So, did Civ 6 specifically... I wonder, I can't remember if Civ 6 introduced diplomatic favor, but it's been a while since we've had a new yield, I think. Culture, I think, was introduced in Civilization. Was that in Civ 4? Or was that introduced in Civ 5? I can't remember. Comment if you know, because I can't remember when these things got introduced, but this is very exciting. Influence is a new yield in Civilization 7 and the primary currency of the diplomacy system. Similar to gold, you accumulate influence on a per-turn basis. Over the course of the game, you spend influence on various things related to diplomacy. I generally don't like fighting in games. I like to, kind of do things peacefully, so this is actually incredibly exciting to me because being able to operate on an axis other than building units and use this other axis to push around or to get the AI to do what I want, it's an exciting proposition. There are 4 main types of diplomacy between empires that require influence. Endeavors. These are mutually beneficial actions between 2 empires. For example, you could initiate a research collaboration request, giving both players science per turn. Sanctions. We're about to learn all about those. These are negative actions against another empire. If you choose hinder military production, you decrease other players' military production output and incur a relationship penalty. Treaties. Longer-lasting decisions that have utilities, such as open borders or improved trade relations. This one going to be a key one, I think we're going to discover. We get espionage, high risk, high reward actions that give you a bonus or inflict a negative effect on another empire with the chance of your actions being revealed. And getting caught in engaging in espionage reduces your relation with the target and decreases how much influence you earn for a time, because of course you are looking rather naughty with your pants down on the world stage. An example of this is to steal technology, which sometimes you use to get the steal technology. We're so clever. Okay, each one of these diplomatic actions requires a certain amount of influence to get started and can be initiated by you or another leader or vice versa. When an action is taken, as long as it isn't an espionage action, the other player will get a chance to respond. There are 3 types of responses. Support. Supporting an action allows it to be successful as well as mutually beneficial. Supporting an action requires some amount of influence to be spent. So this is, a consensual one. Accepting an action allows it to be successful with more benefit towards the leader that started the action. There's no influence cost to accepting an action. Interesting. So if you want more of the benefit, you do support, and then reject. This is you both agree to kind of have an input rather than the proposer. Here you just don't go against it, and the proposer kind of gets their way. And rejecting an action blocks the action, but costs the same amount of influence depending on the action you're rejecting. Very interesting. Some amount, not the same. We can read. So this means that if you have enough influence, you can perhaps force things through pretty aggressively. The leader that initiated the action gets a refund for the influence they used to spend the action. Ooh, we get a refund. Interesting. So you could repeatedly pressure someone over a same thing and slowly drain their influence, I suppose. Influence is also used to interact with independent powers. You can befriend these entities on the map and improve your relationship over time, eventually transforming them into a city-state with you as the suzerain. But other leaders can spend influence to befriend them as well and become suzerain before you, locking you out of those powerful bonuses. When an independent power becomes a city-state, you'll have even more options for diplomacy. Using influence, you can promote their border to grow and build up their military, potentially applying regional pressure to their neighbors. You can levy their units, which are permanently yours afterwards. Ooh, permanently yours afterwards. This isn't unlike Civ 6, where you only get it for a certain amount of turns. And so often, for me, it didn't often feel that well or that good, but I'm less militarily oriented as well. But being able to levy and permanently get them, that's a different thing. And even incorporate them into your empire to become one of your settlements. I assume this is not to the units, but in fact the city-state. As for more dastardly players, you can incite independent power to raid someone else other than yourself. Hell yeah, brother. So we see a little bit of a picture here. We see befriend independence, which is going to cost 170 of this influence points. We're getting 11 a turn here, and we can also incite a raid for 60, and we are slowly gaining progress 2 per turn for befriending Cortan as well. So we could rush it for 170, but we could also just do this. We could add support for 100. Then what does this do? Okay, I guess we'll figure this stuff out as it goes, but this is going to be kind of the UI and this type of thing, how things go. Acquiring influence is very similar to how other yields in Civilization 7 work. Influence comes from buildings, social policies, attributes, leaders, civ abilities, wonders, and more. Some narrative events even include influence as a bonus outcome, and certain actions in the game world can result in a windfall of influence. Triggering these events, such as settling too close to another player's capital, can result in a relationship penalty and a surplus influence for them to spend against you. Interesting. So if we settle near you, they get influence. I think that makes sense. Okay. There are also some things. There are a lot of... So forward settling someone, is a play pattern in Civilization where you instead of settling your best city, you settle your city that's closest to the borders of the enemy or another civilization so that they can't settle there. And then there's maybe a few cities more internal to yourself that you can settle, but they couldn't settle because they're too close to you. And so what you do is you forward settle and settle close to them to deny the land area to them. And it seems like, I think systems that make this more of a trade-off for you are definitely going to be something that you're interested in. And this is maybe a system that does that. There's like a lot of play patterns where you're just like slowly edging out the AI, and they really should, if they were a human player, they would get very upset about these types of things. Buying a whole bunch of tiles in Civilization 6 to secure certain resources or lock out certain expansion, or to lock out your ability to traverse a mountain range because you buy a specific tile and you deny military access, stuff like this, should make people upset. But okay, there are also things there are also things that can cause a reduction in influence, doing something negative on the world stage. So this is, I think, some of the little things that you should get punished for, but not with the declaration of war, such as conquering or raising settlements can negatively impact how much influence you earn per turn, adding another dimension of strategy. Here we have relationships, agendas, and war. Another key element of diplomacy is relationships, and which can visibly represent how favorably or poorly leaders view one another over the course of an age. Relationships come in different stages: helpful, friendly, neutral, unfriendly, and hostile. Your relationship stage with another leader determines a variety of things, including the type of diplomacy actions you could take with them. For example, military alliances can only be enacted between two leaders with a helpful relationship. This makes sense. That way you can't spam a whole bunch of agreements with them and they have to spend influence to say no, this type of thing. And instead, they can make sure that you have bad relations to avoid getting spammed with a bunch of agreements they are not interested in. So this is the defense against having to pay influence to say no, because as we can see here, this does cost a little bit of influence. Okay, so we see first meet. We can spend influence to get -20 relations. We could do nothing to get no relations. And we could do a friendly greeting for 20 influence, reveals the capital, and +20 on relationship. Tied to relationships are leader agendas. Similar to Civilization 6, agenda represents specific leaders' likes and dislikes of a leader that provide a player's understanding of what type of actions they should do to curry favor. For example, we are about to provide an example from Civ 6. For example, Tecumseh, so hopefully I pronounced that right, suzerain of the world agenda, results in a big decrease in relations if you choose to disperse an independent power, and a small decrease in relations if you aren't actively befriending any independent powers, because they think, independent powers should be subjugated and have suzerains. Tecumseh is available as part of the Tecumseh and Shawnee pack, which is included as part of the Deluxe and Founders editions, these are the ones that give you access on February 6th, which we will be streaming. It is also available as pre-order offer for the Standard Edition until February 11th, and will be available for separate purchase. Exact release date to be confirmed. Terms apply. They always do, don't they? They always do. You can change your relationship with fellow leaders through a wide variety of actions. Starting endeavors or sanctions are a major way to move your relationship forward or backward, as well as diplomatic events such as settling too close to them, there we go, or creating a trade route. Working toward or against a leader's agenda is also a predictable way to affect your relationship with them. This is something that the predictability is like an important factor, that they can have different agendas and different things can make them upset or happy, but that it is not just absolutely chaotic and it is predictable is important for diplomacy and game to like feel good, and for them to feel like a representation or an abstraction of a human. For Victoria 3, the creation of the catalyst system, when you would do something that they wouldn't like settling too close to them, passing them up in GDP ranking, prestige ranking, this type of thing, would give you negative, diplomatic catalyst, which would cause attitude to change, this type of thing. And so it worked in a predictable way, but kind of emergent from what's going on, and we could see that is very much also the idea here. Which brings us to war. War never changes. New to Civilization 7 is the mechanic, except it does. Except it does. New to Civilization 7 is the mechanic of war support. Whichever party has less war support suffers from war weariness. Oh, but it's not symmetric. That's fascinating. So, like in EU4 or something like this, I think both sides get war weariness. It's dependent on how bad your things are going for you. You can earn more or less, but both sides will get it. Here, only one side gets it, which is the side with less war support, which causes happiness penalties for all the player settlements and a combat penalty when fighting against the opponent. Combat penalty is harsh, depending on how big it is. Declaring formal war, which can only happen if your relationship is hostile with another leader, results in no advantage or disadvantage. However, choosing to engage in a surprise war when your relationship hasn't fallen into hostile will result in much more war support for the other side and a penalty for yourself. This sounds fantastic. It can be very difficult to fight in a war when you're suffering from war weariness, but have enough influence and you'll be able to acquire war support for yourself, possibly flipping the tables on your opponent. Very cool. So, if we become more diplomatically oriented, this means we could declare a surprise war and still manage to have support for ourselves much easier. That is interesting. And this will also... So this means if you go diplomatic, then you could be a lot more opportunistic with your wars, perhaps, without getting super punished. In addition, you can spend influence to add war support conflicts between other empires. Also interesting. I think this will be neat to see in action. I imagine this sounds like something you just never do. But it sounds like if you do it and you pull off like influence or causing one side to win a war, whereas otherwise they would not have, then maybe this is actually kind of a really fun type of thing. We see the Spanish-Songhai War, and we see +1 over here towards Songhai, I assume. And so they currently have war support, so the Spanish Empire will be subject to a bunch of penalties, but for 240 influence here, we can support ourselves. Everyone support yourself. It's called self-care. Add war support. Better war support causes the other side to get war awareness, which reduces happiness and combat strength. Okay, well, let's talk about trade now. In Civilization, trade has typically revolved around the exchange of resources. Yes. Limited commodities that appear on the map and have powerful bonuses. And to be honest, this has been a rather modest type of thing that doesn't really represent globalization and some of the effects of trade, although, you have trade routes that provide a lot of gold, and this is kind of how they're abstracted in Civ 6, but it's not it's not enmeshing the two cultures in the same way that it feels like it should. And through the establishment of trade routes, which grant per turn yield buffs to your empire, but they don't create this really deep tie or like cultural exchange or this type of stuff, or at least in Civilization 6. With the removal of the deal table from diplomacy and our overall goal of having you focus on making big decisions, we wanted to make a few important changes to how trade functions in Civ 7. First, acquiring resources has been streamlined in Civ 7. There are 3 ways to gain resource. Growth event, when your settlement expands due to population growth, selecting a tile which with a resource on it automatically builds an improvement. Thank you. That acquires that resource. That reduces a little bit of tedium, because whenever you would get a resource, you would always want to exploit it. It wasn't like you were really, I guess you were determining how you were going to send your worker out, but I do think that this is a nice little change. Trade route, sending a merchant or unit to a nearby settlement will set up a trade route, giving you a copy of each of the resources produced locally there. That is interesting, because I assume this isn't decreasing. Sending a merchant unit to a nearby settlement. Is this only your settlements? Maybe it's only your settlements. But if it's other people's settlements, it seems like this is producing good out of nothing, but we don't necessarily hate this. This is fine. City-states. A few city-states in each age have a unique resource that can only be obtained by being their suzerain. Sounds nice. Practically speaking, this means that if you want to acquire a specific resource, you need to look for it on the map. From there, you can either grow your settlement to acquire it, or send a merchant to establish a trade route. And we can see here, Egypt resources looks like we have some iron, some elephants, olifants, some horses, and some porcelain or something. And we have some settlements. Okay. These are settlements of ours that have specific resources? Or is this our resources? Or are these settlements that we can connect? I'm not sure exactly what's going on. It looks like we have sheep, camels, silk, gypsum, sugar, indigo, dates, and then here's incense and cotton, maybe something like this. Resources in Civilization are split into 3 categories. Empire resources, bonuses that assist you anywhere on the map. Many of these are the old strategic resources from previous Civ games like Iron. So perhaps that's what this is. These are the Empire resources, and these are the settlement resources. City resources, bonuses help you specialize in yields and abilities of a specific city, not a town. City resources that enable you to create cities are especially good at science, culture, a good gold output. So maybe it does pull the resource from the city. So if we move the incense to Waset capital, then maybe this means that it doesn't get to stay here. So if you have to pick and choose where you want your resources to be slotted in, maybe that's a bigger macro decision for you to make. Allocate resources to a settlement over here. This actually does seem to indicate that we are going to have to make choices about where we want our resources to be situated, which is a level of micromanagement that's not previously been in here, but it allows you to make kind of a broader type of strategic decision. And as long as you don't have to keep renewing like a bunch of resource agreements, that it won't necessarily be more micromanagement. So this is like a way of, relative to Civ 6, decreasing the tedium while simultaneously increasing a little bit strategic decision making. We have bonus resources, flat yield buffs that you can move to any settlement, including towns. These are very useful in boosting settlements that are getting unhappy or accelerating growth. This is going to be nice as well. So previously, bonus resources would just apply and make yields on a specific tile look better. But here we see bonus resources fish. I assume we could just move these anywhere, which is going to allow us to be a little bit more precise in terms of distributing resources. It looks like there's no cost for the logistical element. It's just you're gaining a sort of thing that you can choose where to slot in, and the slotting is your strategic decision making. As noted above, you can assign certain types of resources to your cities and settlements. Each settlement has a starting number of slots to hold each resource based on their importance. Capitals have limited slots. Capitals have the most slots, cities have multiple slots, towns have just one. Depending on a variety of factors, you can expand the amount of slots you have. Certain buildings increase your resource capacity if built in that settlement. The camel resource also increases your city capacity. The camel resource also increases your city capacity? That seems very strong. Wow. Check out this short clip to see resources in action. The camel resource increases your city capacity. That seems particularly powerful. But I mean, I guess we don't have a broader context with how good that is. But it kind of makes some sense that camels having access to something like camels would allow you to have more of a far-flung empire. So in terms of abstraction, it makes sense, but it also seems quite strong. Let's see.
Resources have changed from Civilization 6 to Civilization 7, as they now can be assigned to your various cities and towns. As we have more types of resources and how they affect those settlements, such as bonus resources being able to give flat yields to whatever settlement you assign them to. Luxury resources giving unique yields, but it's going to be specifically assignable to cities. And then there's going to be imperial resources, which will apply a net bonus across the entirety of your empire. The way you can get these resources is by improving them yourself, as well as interacting with the trade system. You can build a merchant, and once you establish a trade route to another civilization settlement, you will get all of the resources at that settlement, and they will grant gold for the transaction.
They will grant gold for the transaction. Okay, so there is a cost of moving goods around. On trade routes in particular, these are critical and likely primary ways of getting extra resources, especially if you hit a settlement limit. To create a trade route, you need to unlock a merchant unit, typically by studying its supporting civic, and then sending the merchant to a settlement. Generally, you can form either a land route or a sea route. Land routes have a shorter maximum distance, but create a road between foreign settlements and the nearest settlement in your trade network. Yeah, that makes sense. Sea routes can be twice as distant as a land route. If someone sends a merchant to initiate a trade route to you, you automatically share your resources in that settlement while profiting gold, receiving more if there are more resources provided, and double if it is a sea route. So this means that you will not lose out to provide resources. During the Antiquity and Exploration Age, merchants need to travel directly to settlements to initiate the trade route. In the Modern Age, they can do so from anywhere on the map. Nice. Once a trade route has been established, a trade caravan or ship is created. This unit gets generated continuously, so you will not have to reinitiate once complete, but watch out, they can also get plundered. This is fantastic that we don't have to reinitiate trade routes. I assume that you can cancel at a certain point, but you might need to stay for a certain amount of time. You might need to wait for the end of a particular cycle, but this is good. Economic Legacy Path. From our first Dev Diary, Legacy Paths are a new feature in Civilization 7, essentially act as an age-specific objectives for you to accomplish. Every age in Civilization 7 has a unique economic legacy path, which will encourage you to adapt your strategy and evolve your economy. As part of these paths, 2 or more resources make their debuts: treasure resources and factory resources. Very cool, and also, the factory resource in particular sounds quite nice, getting into the later game and perhaps choosing to specialize, orient your economy in a particular way, build and innovate certain types of material or technological sorts of advantage, and turn that into something that you can slot in cities. Treasure resources are exclusive to the Exploration Age, not Rage, and represent resources specific to distant land. Factory resources are exclusive to the Modern Age, and are ones that can be processed in a factory and turned into a strong empire-wide effect. Microchips or something, maybe. Here's a brief look at how each economic legacy path works. Silk Roads, Antiquity Age. Slot enough resources to your settlement to finish this path, so we have to acquire as many resources as possible. To do so, you'll need to have access to both those resources and enough slots to support them, so we need to create an infrastructure and then gather resources. Treasure Fleet in the Exploration Age. Acquire special treasure resources that are found exclusively in distant lands. After you research shipbuilding, you gain treasure fleets from these settlements. Return to your homelands to finish this path. Okay, so it's about looting. Shout out to Great Britain. Railroad Tycoon. Connect your settlements back to your capital with a network of railways, roads, and ports. So now it's about infrastructure and globalization. These connected settlements can add factories, giving each factory settlement a chance to process a single factory resource that provides a unique empire-wide bonus and pushes you down this legacy path. And so we're going to be choosing bonus bonuses that are going to maybe lock us into having certain types of advantages, and hopefully these bonuses are balanced enough that you can play one way in a particular run and another way in a different run, perhaps depending on which ruler or which leader you're playing with, or which civ you have unlocked for your particular age. Okay. Looking ahead as we head towards launch, indeed we do, we're looking forward to see many of the friendships, betrayals, and alliances you'll create with your player group. You'll create in your Civ games, whether you're playing against the AI or in single player, or squaring off with real players in multiplayer. And this is just the beginning. These systems are designed to evolve, opening the door to new possibilities for expansion and refinement down the road. Well, I'm excited about some of the changes they've made towards resources in particular. This slotting in minigame, I think, is probably an improvement over Luxury's just giving you, like, countrywide happiness or something like this. I think that this seems like an improvement. It gives you more of a minigame to play. And this minigame, in some sense, is replacing the other minigame of maybe, like, the district management to some extent, and the deciding where to build and what workers to build what and this type of stuff. And so you're exchanging sub minigames for others, and overall they do seem to be an improvement in terms of what they're replacing. But I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Just a friendly reminder that we are going over these. Some of these are a little old, and we will also be streaming on February 6th and or 11th and making content for Civilization 7, I believe. But you know, we already said like, comment, subscribe, I think. So other than that, have a happy Wednesday.